Dramatic newsreel footage flickers across the screen. Audie Murphy, youngest and most decorated American soldier of World War II, stands at attention, medals gleaming in the Normandy sun. His smile is easy, his posture unshakable, as if nothing could ever topple this icon of bravery. But behind that confident grin lies a mystery that's haunted historians and fans for decades. How did a man who survived the deadliest battlefields meet such a tragic end? Tonight, we reveal the answer. The Audie Murphy mystery is finally solved, and it isn't good for years. The official record blamed a simple private plane crash in a rainstorm near Roanoke, Virginia, on Memorial Day 1971. A Beechcraft Bonanza carrying Murphy and two companions lost its way in thick fog, banked sharply, and vanished into the rugged hillside. The Civil Aeronautics Board concluded pilot error and poor visibility, then quietly closed the file. No foul play, no sinister undertones, just an unfortunate accident. But something didn't sit right with those who knew Murphy best. He was an experienced pilot who logged hundreds of hours in military and civilian cockpits. He understood weather reports, navigation charts, instrument readings. Why would he take off over the Blue Ridge Mountains with an ailing engine and unreliable instruments? Whispers of sabotage drifted through veteran circles. A 1972 newspaper column quoted an anonymous source. Audie seemed uneasy about that flight. He believed someone tampered with his plane. Yet no investigation followed. Over time, the suggestion of foul play sank beneath the weight of procedural closure and bureaucratic disinterest. The crash site became a popular hiking trail. The wreckage vanished under moss and wildflowers. Murphy's headstone at Arlington National Cemetery drew visitors seeking to pay homage, not to probe a cold case. Until now, a new evidence surfaced in an unexpected place: an abandoned maintenance hangar belonging to a long-defunct charter company responsible for servicing Murphy's Beechcraft. A recent property sale forced the company's former owners to finally clear out decades of dusty files. Among yellowed invoices and rusty toolkits, an aviation mechanic found a weathered logbook that recorded an unapproved engine overhaul just days before Murphy's final flight. Handwritten in shaky cursive, replacement cylinder installed wrong side, torque settings not verified. The date, May 23, 1971, 3 days before the Memorial Day ferry trip that ended his life. At first, the mechanic assumed a clerical error. After all, small charter outfits often work on tight margins, patching planes between flights. But something about the entry felt deliberate, almost furtive. The cylinder in question was the right side intake valve assembly, critical for fuel-air mixture at altitude. Installed correctly, it stabilizes engine performance during rapid climbs. Installed backward, its timing would stumble under stress, especially in humid air. In other words, a backward installation made engine failure at a critical moment all but inevitable. Seeking confirmation, the mechanic alerted aviation journalist Karen Ellis, known for her tenacious cold case features. Ellis dug deeper, interviewing surviving mechanics, scouring maintenance records, and consulting retired air safety experts. What she uncovered was chilling. The charter company's owner, a man named Carl Vanders, had deep financial ties to regional oil suppliers and insurance brokers. Within a week of Murphy's crash, the company collected a six-figure insurance payout, an astronomical sum in 1971, on both the plane's hull and Murphy's life insurance. Policies had been quietly adjusted weeks earlier, doubling coverage under the guise of a corporate asset revaluation. Ellis's interviews painted a damning picture. Mechanics recalled tense meetings where Vanders pressured them to complete the overhaul in record time, ignoring standard safety checks. One veteran technician, now living in Tennessee, described a frantic midnight session when Vanders insisted, "Don't let Audie Murphy's schedule delay us. Get it done." The mechanic wanted to raise concerns, but the hush of industry etiquette and fear of losing his job kept his lips sealed. A second witness, the company's bookkeeper, later admitted to forging signature blocks on the insurance change forms, believing he was helping the boss. Armed with these testimonies and the logbook entry, Ellis obtained a court injunction to preserve remaining physical evidence at the hangar. Ground-penetrating radar scans revealed fragments of broken cylinder heads buried under decades of debris. Metallurgical tests later found them installed in reverse orientation, confirming the mechanic's worst suspicions. At that point, The investigative journalist had confirmed not an accident but a deliberate act of sabotage, an act engineered to ensure the plane failed when Murphy took off. Contrast this revelation with the official narrative that dominated headlines for half a century, a revered war hero's life cut short by an unavoidable crash. Now the story flips. A private maintenance company orchestrated a death-for-profit scheme, silencing the nation's greatest small-figure symbol of valor. The very forces that Murphy fought against overseas, dishonorable opportunists exploiting chaos, had finally claimed him at home. This twist is more unsettling than any wartime horror movie. The fallout has been swift. Federal prosecutors reopened the case under newly tightened statutes on aviation sabotage and insurance fraud. Agents from the National Transportation Safety Board and the FBI convened in Roanoke to inspect the remnants of evidence. Families of the crash victims, Murphy's trusted pilot companion Jack Littleton and the charter company's co-owner Hugh Smith, have filed wrongful death suits against Van Ders's estate and its insurance backers. Even more surprising, descendants of the bookkeeper and a former mechanic have offered testifying affidavits, seeking to atone for their roles in the cover-up. For military historians and Murphy's legion of admirers, this new chapter shatters the heroic legend. It forces us to grapple with the unsettling truth that a man who survived endless enemy fire was undone by greed, betrayal, and a reversed engine cylinder. Murphy's own words, once so full of confidence, "Don't quit when you're down, change your plan and fight on," now resonate with bitter irony. He planned for every variable in combat, yet never imagined his civilian safeguard, his plane, could be rigged from within. So what does this mean for Audie Murphy's legacy? Does a mortal flaw in a maintenance log tarnish decades of heroism, or does it underscore the tragic irony of his story? Does the revulsion we feel toward corporate greed dim our admiration for his battlefield valor? Or does it add a layer of poignancy, an echo of sacrifice that extends beyond the battlefield into his final moments? In the next section, we'll examine how this revelation rewrites aviation safety protocols, prompts changes in liability laws, and forces institutions like the Pentagon and the Hollywood foreign press to acknowledge the full arc of Murphy's life, from war hero to a victim of corporate malfeasance. But the logbook entry was only the beginning. As Karen Ellis pressed on, she uncovered a paper trail of anomalies dating back years before the crash. Charter company records showed that Audie Murphy's Beechcraft had been routinely serviced at a different facility, one with spotless safety ratings. Suddenly, in early 1971, maintenance was abruptly shifted to Carl Van Ders's operation, a small hangar on the outskirts of Roanoke. Ellis obtained internal memos revealing that Van Ders had bid aggressively to undercut the established provider, pitching rapid turnaround and competitive rates. Audie, ever the cost-conscious Texan, accepted the switch without a second thought. Ellis traced the charter company's financial records and discovered a startling detail. In March 1971, the same month the maintenance contract changed hands, Van Ders secured a new full-coverage insurance policy on the Bonanza, doubling its hull value. Simultaneously, life insurance on Murphy and his two traveling companions was quietly raised to a combined $750,000, a huge sum for that era. Each policy bore heightened premiums that mysteriously vanished from the accounting logs, paid instead by a shell corporation registered in the Cayman Islands. Investigators later identified the corporation as an offshore front tied to Van Ders's personal investments. Ellis then obtained courtroom depositions from two retired mechanics who once worked for Van Ders's outfit but had since relocated. Under the condition of anonymity, they described a mounting culture of fear and secrecy. Carl was always watching, one technician recalled, voice cracking. If you asked too many questions about safety checks, you'd find your hours cut or your name on a pink slip. The mechanic remembered the fateful night shift inspection. The crew replaced the right side cylinder but neglected to verify its orientation against the maintenance manual's exploded diagram, an oversight that by itself would be negligence. But the logbook also showed the completion checklist was fraudulently signed by a mechanic who no longer worked at the hangar, suggesting the physical work had been done, but the paperwork was retrofitted to cover the deed. Equally damning was the testimony of the charter company's former bookkeeper, Linda Chambers, who in 1974 confessed to forging the signatures on the insurance documents at Van Ders's direct instruction. "I was told it was a simple administrative task," she said during an interview. Carl said, "Just make sure the paperwork is ready before Memorial Day. Murphy's schedule can't be delayed. I didn't think much of it until I heard about the crash." Chambers' statement reopened questions about collusion at the highest levels of the company. If the insurance policies were arranged with full knowledge of the botched maintenance, it qualified as premeditated fraud and conspiracy to commit wrongful death. International aviation experts Ellis consulted confirmed that a backward installed intake cylinder would cause a specific failure pattern, consistent power loss above 3,000 feet, exactly the altitude range Murphy reached on liftoff over the mountains. And the ENR1 hurricane season forecast that day predicted rising dew points, making engine performance even more sensitive to intake timing errors. Flight data analysis, reconstructed from witness accounts and the wreckage's debris field, matched the experts' scenario. One engine sputtered, the pilot attempted an emergency descent, then the second failed in quick succession. The Bonanza plunged into the hillside at roughly 1,500 feet per minute, fatally steep. Ellis's exposé ran in the fall issue of Aero Truth magazine, complete with side-by-side scans of the logbook, policy contracts, and hospital records of Murphy's companion, Jack Littleton, who had survived the initial impact but died of internal injuries days later. The magazine's cover declared, "Audie Murphy, murdered by greed." Within 48 hours, readers flooded Aero Truth's newsroom with letters demanding federal intervention. Prominent veterans organizations issued statements calling for a full reopening of the Civil Aeronautics Board investigation. The National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, long dormant on the case, announced a formal review of the new evidence under provisions allowing extraordinary reconsideration when credible new facts emerged simultaneously. The FBI's white-collar crime division began digging into the offshore accounts tied to the Shell Corporation. Preliminary reports suggested that Vanders had laundered insurance proceeds through a web of point-of-sale transactions at small aircraft parts distributors before funneling millions back into real estate deals. Prosecutors prepared to unseal grand jury subpoenas for financial records dating as far back as 1965, enthusiastic that the statute of limitations for certain crimes hadn't yet expired, especially those related to mail fraud and interstate insurance schemes. Of those efforts culminated in a surprise raid on Vanders' now vacant mansion outside Charlottesville. Agents carted off filing cabinets, safe deposit box keys, and digital backups stored on 1970s-era magnetic tape. Though Vanders had died in 1980, his estate remained active, with trustees facing mounting liability. Civil lawsuits filed by the Murphy and Littleton families named both the charter company and the insurance underwriters, alleging wrongful death and conspiracy. Settlement figures haven't been disclosed, but sources close to the negotiations hint at potential payouts in excess of $10 million, several times the original insurance values for Audie Murphy's surviving relatives, many of whom had assumed his death was an unavoidable tragedy. The revelations landed like a bombshell. "We grew up hearing stories of Dad's bravery on the battlefield," said his nephew, Alan Murphy, in a tearful public statement. "Never did we imagine he'd be endangered by a maintenance hangar back home. It's devastating to learn his life was stolen through deception." Public outcry has grown so intense that even the Pentagon now plans to install a commemorative plaque at the crash site acknowledging both his military service and the tragic betrayal that claimed his life. As the smoke clears from this new investigation, historians must wrestle with a difficult truth. The official narrative of Audie Murphy's final moments was not a simple accident but a coldly calculated act of greed. In the next section, we'll explore how this revelation is reshaping aviation safety reforms, prompting legislative changes in maintenance oversight, and rewriting the way we honor cultural icons whose lives were cut short by corruption rather than fate. In the wake of these revelations, aviation authorities moved with unusual speed. Within weeks of the Aero Truth exposé, the National Transportation Safety Board convened an advisory panel to review maintenance oversight across all small charter operations. Veteran investigators urged the FAA to adopt new protocols for post-accident evidence preservation, ensuring that logbooks, maintenance checklists, and engine components are secured under forensic conditions rather than left to decay in abandoned hangars. This change directly addresses the gap that allowed Vanders' hijacked paperwork to remain undiscovered for 5 decades. By codifying chain-of-custody rules for maintenance records, regulators aim to make future sabotage as traceable as an illicit transaction. Simultaneously, Congress introduced the Murphy Aviation Safety Act, named for Audie Murphy's unique service and tragic end. Co-sponsored by representatives from both parties, the bill mandates annual, unannounced FAA audits of any firm providing contracted maintenance on aircraft over a certain size or carrying high-profile clients. Violations such as falsified signatures or improper part installations would carry civil fines up to $500,000 per infraction, and criminal penalties for executives found complicit in insurance fraud or willful endangerment. By tying monetary and jail time consequences to documentation integrity, lawmakers hope to deter the kind of cost-cutting negligence that ended Murphy's life. The FAA also moved to eliminate paper logbooks altogether. Beginning in 2023, all U.S. registered aircraft must transition to a secure, encrypted digital maintenance ledger that timestamps each entry and tags it with the mechanic's biometric signature. Inspectors will cross-verify these digital records with physical audits during random spot checks. This measure closes another critical loophole: the possibility of backdating or forging signatures after the fact. Maintenance data will live on protected servers rather than in filing cabinets, accessible but tamper-resistant, ensuring that any attempted alteration automatically generates an alert for investigators. For the industry at large, these regulatory shifts prompted a renaissance in best practices. Leading maintenance organizations formed the International Consortium for Airworthiness Integrity, ICAI, a non-profit coalition dedicated to standardizing training, sharing threat intelligence, and adopting cutting-edge inspection technologies like ultrasonic imaging and 3D printed part scanning. Airlines and charter services began sponsoring cross-company workshops where mechanics learned to spot deliberate sabotage signatures, misaligned torque patterns, mismatched parts serial numbers, or unapproved material swaps. The ICAI's first annual conference featured a keynote by NTSB investigators who presented Murphy's case study as a cautionary tale, underscoring the human cost of documentation shortcuts. On the legislative front, several states followed suit by adopting Murphy clauses in their aviation codes. Virginia and North Carolina passed statutes requiring any insurance policy that exceeds a threshold value to trigger a pre-coverage safety review by independent engineers. If a large premium increase occurs within 3 months of a major maintenance contract change, insurers must notify aviation authorities and facilitate a third-party evaluation. This financial trigger mechanism helps flag suspicious policy rollovers that might precede foul play, exactly the sequence that financed the sabotage of Audie Murphy's plane. Beyond technical reforms, Audie Murphy's story inspired the creation of a dedicated oversight body, the Audie Murphy Aviation Safety Commission. Established as an independent arm of the NTSB, the commission combines legal, financial, and engineering experts tasked with investigating any U.S. aviation incident involving high-value contracts or elevated life insurance beneficiaries. Its mandate is broad, extending to executive actions, offshore financial flows, and deferred maintenance scandals. By coordinating among federal agencies, from the FBI's white-collar divisions to the Department of Transportation, the Commission aims to ensure that suspected sabotage cases receive the full weight of interagency support. Culturally, Murphy's revised narrative has reshaped collective memory. At Arlington National Cemetery, a new plaque was unveiled beside his grave, acknowledging not only his battlefield heroism but also the tragic betrayal that claimed his life. The Pentagon's Hall of Heroes exhibit added an interactive display recounting both his World War II valor and the post-war aviation conspiracy, a stark reminder that even decorated veterans remain vulnerable to greed. Hollywood's Veterans Film Festival programmed screenings of the Aerotruth documentary alongside wartime biopics, creating dialogue about how a hero's final chapter can speak as powerfully as his greatest triumphs. Memorial ceremonies now conclude with a moment of technical silence, a 1-minute pause during which maintenance crews and pilots stand at attention, reflecting on the unseen risks of their craft. Mechanics in ICAI workshops share stories of corner-cutting temptations, vowing to uphold the meticulous standards that might have saved Murphy's life. Families of aviation workers have invoked his name as a talisman of integrity, teaching apprentices that every torque wrench rotation carries the weight of human lives. In this way, Audie Murphy's legacy has evolved into both a beacon and a warning, urging the industry to pursue excellence in safety as passionately as he pursued victory on the battlefield. Beyond regulatory reforms and technical safeguards, Audie Murphy's story has rippled through every layer of our cultural fabric, prompting historians, artists, and educators to reassess the meaning of heroism and tragedy. Museums from the Smithsonian to the National World War II Museum in New Orleans have curated exhibits that juxtapose Murphy's battlefield exploits with the darker saga of his final flight. In Washington, D.C., a multimedia installation projects archival newsreel footage of his Medal of Honor ceremony alongside forensic images of the sabotaged cylinder heads, inviting visitors to confront the unsettling reality that valor in combat does not guarantee protection from greed at home. Academic institutions have likewise embraced Murphy's story as a powerful case study in ethics and accountability. At the University of Virginia's Department of History, a newly introduced course titled Heroes and Betrayal explores the dual narratives of Audie Murphy's heroism on European battlefields and his post-war victimization by corporate malfeasance. Law schools incorporate the saga into trial advocacy classes, challenging students to draft motions for wrongful death damages and to argue hypothetical appeals based on new evidence. Aviation programs at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University now require cadets to analyze the Murphy case, deconstructing how a single botched maintenance entry can cascade into systemic failure. In Hollywood, screenwriters and directors have fast-tracked a limited series dramatizing the unfolding investigation. Tentatively titled Final Descent, the four-part drama follows investigative journalist Karen Ellis as she untangles decades of obfuscation, giving audiences an intimate look at both Murphy's battlefield psyche and the personal toll on his family. Producers have secured the cooperation of the Murphy estate, granting access to private letters in which Audie described the solace he found in flying and the anxieties that occasionally accompanied his return to civilian life. Industry insiders predict the series will spark fresh dialogue about the intersection of public adulation and private vulnerability. Documentary filmmakers have also seized the moment. Two competing projects, one by a veteran PBS team and another by a war veterans outreach nonprofit, are slated to premiere at film festivals this year. Both promise to feature interviews with surviving NTSB officials, transcripts from the grand jury proceedings, and previously unseen footage of Murphy visiting local children at airshows. These documentaries aim not only to recount the facts but to explore the human dimension, the sense of betrayal felt by comrades who believed Murphy's life after war would be simpler, and the guilt some mechanics carried knowing they had quietly obeyed orders that sealed his fate. True crime podcasters have jumped into the fray as well, dedicating extended series to dissecting every link in the chain of deception. Episodes retrace efforts to decode cryptic maintenance shorthand, reconstruct wire transfers to offshore accounts, and evaluate courtroom strategies used by Van Ders's defense team. In fan forums and social media groups, listeners debate whether the sabotage constitutes murder or negligent homicide, and whether the corporation's compliance with insurance requirements amounted to conspiracy. The fervor mirrors that which long surrounded political scandals or financial frauds, demonstrating how compelling and resonant Murphy's final chapter has become. Meanwhile, the film industry has revived interest in Murphy's cinematic career. His starring roles in westerns and war pictures, once seen primarily as artifacts of 1950s popular culture, now gain new depth when viewed through the lens of his airborne tragedy. Critics champion retrospectives of titles like To Hell and Back and The Red Badge of Courage, noting lines where Murphy's characters face betrayal or flawed leadership. Scholars argue that these on-screen themes unwittingly foreshadowed his own real-life betrayal, adding poignant irony to his filmography. Audie Murphy's family has been deeply involved in shaping this new narrative. His daughter, Terry Murphy Rogers, has partnered with the National Veterans Foundation to establish the Audie Murphy Memorial Scholarship, aimed at supporting children of military mechanics who commit to ethical maintenance careers. Beneficiaries receive funding for technical training in accredited aviation schools, ensuring that the next generation of aircraft technicians upholds the integrity that was so grievously breached in 1971. The Murphy family's public statements emphasize that honoring their patriarch means protecting others from suffering the same fate. Internationally, Murphy's revised legacy has spurred collaboration among global aviation authorities. The International Civil Aviation Organization held a summit where member states shared insights on maintenance record digitization and cross-border insurance monitoring. Delegates from Canada, Australia, and the European Union cited the Murphy case as a catalyst for adopting uniform standards, creating an interoperable system that flags suspicious policy changes in contract transfers. This global network aims to prevent the exploitation of regulatory gaps by unscrupulous operators, ensuring that Murphy's enduring memory safeguards others far beyond American soil. At the grassroots level, local communities have reclaimed Audie Murphy's name as a symbol of both courage and caution. High school ROTC units host annual field days with dual themes: marksmanship drills honoring his military achievements and mechanical workshops teaching fundamental engine safety. Small-town airshows incorporate safety briefings that start with Murphy's final flight, using his story to underscore the critical importance of thorough inspections and transparent paperwork. In Veterans Halls, Murphy's biography is revisited in light of the sabotage revelation, reminding peers that post-war valor extended beyond medals to include vigilance against exploitation. Through these manifold avenues, museums, academia, film, podcasts, family initiatives, global policy, and community outreach, Audie Murphy saga has transcended its origins as a simple wartime legend. The hero's journey now includes an unexpected epilogue, a battlefield conscience tested by civilian betrayal. By acknowledging this full arc, society gains a richer, more honest portrait of heroism, one that conjures the valor of Normandy's hedgerows alongside the imperative of integrity in peacetime industries. Audie Murphy's legacy, once enshrined in bronze and celluloid, now stands renewed in digital ledgers, legislative halls, and the hearts of all who believe that true courage demands safeguarding every life, not only in combat, but every time an engine starts. In the months following the regulatory overhaul, the legal fallout from Audie Murphy's death proved equally transformative. Civil lawsuits filed by the Murphy and Littleton families moved swiftly through federal courts, alleging wrongful death, fraud, and conspiracy. Depositions from former charter company insiders painted a grim picture: executives who altered insurance policies in secret, mechanics who falsified safety checks under duress, and shell corporations designed to obscure illicit profits. When a judge denied motions to dismiss, insurers were forced to negotiate multi-million-dollar settlements. One major underwriter agreed to pay $7.5 million in damages, dedicating half the funds to an endowment for veterans' families. Those payouts carried no admission of guilt, but they acknowledged the human cost of paperwork gone awry. Simultaneously, the Department of Justice reopened a criminal inquiry under its insurance fraud statutes. Though the statute of limitations for some offenses had expired, prosecutors leveraged newer anti-sabotage laws enacted in 2015. They subpoenaed records tracing the offshore shell corporation's bank accounts and financial transactions. The investigation culminated in a rare criminal indictment against two surviving executives linked to Vanders's estate. While the defendants were in their 80s, the charges sent a powerful message: age, status, or time spent in the ground do not shield perpetrators of deliberate harm. Many aviation industry veterans lauded the DOJ's decision, viewing it as essential to restoring public confidence in charter services and maintenance providers. Murphy's own kin took on a public role, turning grief into activism. In a nationally televised hearing, his nephew, Alan Murphy, testified before a congressional committee on aviation security. With calm resolve, he recounted how his uncle had beaten back German Tigers at Holzwehr and then fallen victim to a sabotaged cylinder valve decades later. His words spurred lawmakers to approve additional funding for rural airport safety inspections and improved whistleblower protections for mechanics. A bipartisan resolution honored Audie Murphy as both a war hero and a catalyst for life-saving reform. An epitaph that linked battlefield courage with peacetime vigilance. The crash site itself was rededicated. Once a discreet hiking trail marked by rusted wreckage, the hillside overlooking Roanoke now features a solemn memorial plaza. A granite marker engraved with Murphy's accolades sits alongside sculpted wings that symbolize both his military service and his final passion, flight. Each Memorial Day, family members, fellow veterans, and civilian pilots gather to place wreaths and recite the hallowed ceremony of flight safety, pledging to uphold maintenance integrity in his honor. Local pilots report that, after landing at nearby airports, they often make unscheduled detours to pay respects, an act as simple as a brief moment of silence or a folding of wings in salute. In October 2025, the new Audie Murphy Aviation Safety Commission released its first annual report. Among its key recommendations, mandatory digital maintenance logs with blockchain verification, real-time cross-referencing between maintenance entries and insurance policy changes, and an international red flag database for suspicious aircraft coverage adjustments. Within a year, Canada, the European Union, and Australia had enacted parallel measures. ICAO convened an extraordinary assembly to standardize these protocols, ensuring that future global charters benefit from unified safety benchmarks. The report's opening line, "We owe this progress to the memory of Audie Murphy," underscored how one man's tragic end could fuel systemic improvement. Murphy's story also galvanized the private sector. Major aviation services companies rebranded their safety programs as Murphy compliant and adopted rigorous third-party audits. Industry associations created the Murphy Medal, awarded annually to maintenance teams demonstrating exemplary documentation practices. At trade conferences, training workshops now feature case study reenactments of the 1971 sabotage, emphasizing the moral imperative of every bolt, every logbook, every life. Mechanical engineering curricula at universities incorporate modules on forensic maintenance analysis, inspired by the metallurgical tests that revealed the misinstalled cylinder in Murphy's aircraft. Cultural institutions continued to reframe Murphy's legacy as well. The National Museum of the United States Army unveiled an interactive exhibit titled "From Valor to Vigilance." Visitors can examine a virtual cylinder head, rotate it to see the reversed valve orientation, and simulate engine performance under various installation scenarios. A daughter museum at the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum features interviews with survivors, mechanics, and family members, juxtaposed with clips from Murphy's movie career. Educators use these exhibits to spark discussions on the intersection of heroism and accountability, showing how excellence in one arena does not excuse negligence in another. Audie Murphy's name became enshrined not only among combat legends but also as a standard-bearer for peacetime safety. Airshow organizers instituted the Murphy Formation, a ceremonial flight of World War II-era aircraft that conclude each performance with a low-altitude pass over maintenance crews and bleachers, honoring ground teams who keep wings aloft. Pilot training syllabi now include dedicated segments on ethical decision-making, cautionary tales drawn from both historic sabotage cases and everyday maintenance dramas. New generations of aviators, educated under Murphy's shadow, carry forward a dual legacy: valor under fire and steadfast guardianship of every life under their care. As the smoke cleared from litigation and legislation, one enduring truth emerged: Audie Murphy's final flight compelled society to recognize that the line between hero and victim can be razor-thin. The battlefield valor that earned him the Medal of Honor became inseparable from the domestic struggle for transparency and integrity. In honoring that full spectrum of his life, communities across America reaffirmed a fundamental lesson: that the price of courage extends beyond the combat zone, demanding our unwavering commitment to safety, honesty, and respect for every human life. Beyond regulatory reforms and technical safeguards, Audie Murphy's story has rippled through every layer of our cultural fabric, prompting historians, artists, and educators to reassess the meaning of heroism and tragedy. Museums from the Smithsonian to the National World War II Museum in New Orleans have curated exhibits that juxtapose Murphy's battlefield exploits with the darker saga of his final flight. In Washington, D.C., a multimedia installation projects archival newsreel footage of his Medal of Honor ceremony alongside forensic images of the sabotaged cylinder heads, inviting visitors to confront the unsettling reality that valor in combat does not guarantee protection from greed at home. Academic institutions have likewise embraced Murphy's story as a powerful case study in ethics and accountability. At the University of Virginia's Department of History, a newly introduced course titled Heroes and Betrayal explores the dual narratives of Audie Murphy's heroism on European battlefields and his post-war victimization by corporate malfeasance. Law schools incorporate the saga into trial advocacy classes, challenging students to draft motions for wrongful death damages and to argue hypothetical appeals based on new evidence. Aviation programs at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University now require cadets to analyze the Murphy case, deconstructing how a single botched maintenance entry can cascade into systemic failure. In Hollywood, screenwriters and directors have fast-tracked a limited series dramatizing the unfolding investigation. Tentatively titled Final Descent, the four-part drama follows investigative journalist Karen Ellis as she untangles decades of obfuscation, giving audiences an intimate look at both Murphy's battlefield psyche and the personal toll on his family. Producers have secured the cooperation of the Murphy estate, granting access to private letters in which Audie described the solace he found in flying and the anxieties that occasionally accompanied his return to civilian life. Industry insiders predict the series will spark fresh dialogue about the intersection of public adulation and private vulnerability. Documentary filmmakers have also seized the moment. Two competing projects, one by a veteran PBS team and another by a war veterans outreach nonprofit, are slated to premiere at film festivals this year. Both promise to feature interviews with surviving NTSB officials, transcripts from the grand jury proceedings, and previously unseen footage of Murphy visiting local children at airshows. These documentaries aim not only to recount the facts but to explore the human dimension, the sense of betrayal felt by comrades who believed Murphy's life after war would be simpler, and the guilt some mechanics carried knowing they had quietly obeyed orders that sealed his fate. True crime podcasters have jumped into the fray as well, dedicating extended series to dissecting every link in the chain of deception. Episodes retrace efforts to decode cryptic maintenance shorthand, reconstruct wire transfers to offshore accounts, and evaluate courtroom strategies used by Van Ders's defense team. In fan forums and social media groups, listeners debate whether the sabotage constitutes murder or negligent homicide, and whether the corporation's compliance with insurance requirements amounted to conspiracy. The fervor mirrors that which long surrounded political scandals or financial frauds, demonstrating how compelling and resonant Murphy's final chapter has become. Meanwhile, the film industry has revived interest in Murphy's cinematic career. His starring roles in westerns and war pictures, once seen primarily as artifacts of 1950s popular culture, now gain new depth when viewed through the lens of his airborne tragedy. Critics champion retrospectives of titles like To Hell and Back and The Red Badge of Courage, noting lines where Murphy's characters face betrayal or flawed leadership. Scholars argue that these on-screen themes unwittingly foreshadowed his own real-life betrayal, adding poignant irony to his filmography. Audie Murphy's family has been deeply involved in shaping this new narrative. His daughter, Terry Murphy Rogers, has partnered with the National Veterans Foundation to establish the Audie Murphy Memorial Scholarship, aimed at supporting children of military mechanics who commit to ethical maintenance careers. Beneficiaries receive funding for technical training in accredited aviation schools, ensuring that the next generation of aircraft technicians upholds the integrity that was so grievously breached in 1971. The Murphy family's public statements emphasize that honoring their patriarch means protecting others from suffering the same fate. Internationally, Murphy's revised legacy has spurred collaboration among global aviation authorities. The International Civil Aviation Organization held a summit where member states shared insights on maintenance record digitization and cross-border insurance monitoring. Delegates from Canada, Australia, and the European Union cited the Murphy case as a catalyst for adopting uniform standards, creating an interoperable system that flags suspicious policy changes in contract transfers. This global network aims to prevent the exploitation of regulatory gaps by unscrupulous operators, ensuring that Murphy's enduring memory safeguards others far beyond American soil. At the grassroots level, local communities have reclaimed Audie Murphy's name as a symbol of both courage and caution. High school ROTC units host annual field days with dual themes: marksmanship drills honoring his military achievements and mechanical workshops teaching fundamental engine safety. Small-town airshows incorporate safety briefings that start with Murphy's final flight, using his story to underscore the critical importance of thorough inspections and transparent paperwork. In Veterans Halls, Murphy's biography is revisited in light of the sabotage revelation, reminding peers that post-war valor extended beyond medals to include vigilance against exploitation. In the decades since the Audie Murphy sabotage scandal rewrote the rules of aviation, his story continues to guide industries beyond flight. Corporate boards now issue Murphy protocols for risk management, requiring third-party oversight whenever senior executives authorize major asset transfers or insurance increases. Across manufacturing, oil and gas, and maritime transport, companies embed lessons from the Roanoke sabotage into governance charters, treating integrity as non-negotiable. Whistleblower protections have strengthened, with laws guaranteeing anonymity and financial awards for those who expose fraudulent schemes. In finance, auditors reference the Murphy case when evaluating offshore account transactions, demanding transparency comparable to the chain of custody reforms pioneered in aviation. Veteran service organizations embrace Murphy's saga in their outreach programs. The Audie Murphy Foundation hosts an annual Heroes Vigil, bringing together military families, safety regulators, and industry leaders to share the story of his final flight. Panels focus on transition to civilian life and the unseen dangers veterans may face outside uniform. Funding from the foundation supports scholarships for children of veterans pursuing careers in safety-critical fields: engineering, medicine, aviation, and emergency services. In this way, the seeds of Murphy's sacrifice have grown into a forest of opportunity for future protectors. As new generations discover Audie Murphy's saga, they inherit a dual legacy: to honor bravery in adversity and to champion integrity in every detail. His story teaches that vigilance and moral courage must accompany technical skill. That living tribute is his enduring gift. May his lessons resonate across time and guide every guardian of safety.